So many books here. Too many. Oh my goodness. Hi everyone, my name is Liz. I read and welcome to another video. So this is going to be my October book haul. I have quite a few books here to share with you. I have like 15 titles here, so let's just get on with the video. So I'm going to start with kind of the newer ones. I have two books that were released in 2018 that I'm excited that I found at the thrift store. The first one is All the Ever Afters by Danielle Teller. So this is Cinderella's stepmother's untold story. So it's kind of a retelling, but it's the story of her stepmother, and it starts off with her being quite young. You follow her being a peasant born into serfdom, and then separated from her family, and then becoming a laundress at a big manor. And then from there you follow her on a journey from that livelihood up until her becoming Cinderella's stepmother. So I guess it's sort of like a sympathetic story. Obviously I think the events of the Cinderella story will still take place, but it'll be interesting to get to this. I haven't read a retelling in a really long time, and actually the stepmother is usually one of my least favorite characters in the Cinderella story. It actually bothers me. I find it really hard to read about parents who are not caring towards their children, so I always found it hard to sympathize with the stepmother, so this will be definitely an interesting read for me. The next one is kind of really out of my comfort zone, but I'm starting to maybe like thrillers. I'm not too sure, but when I found this I decided to pick it up, and that is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. The only thriller that I've currently been reading is the Mara Dyer series, and I don't know if that's considered overly thrilling or anything, but I definitely kind of want to broaden my horizons when it comes to this genre, and I know Ruth Ware is a very popular thriller writer, and so I've heard good things about this thriller as well, so I'm very excited about this one. We follow Harriet, and she works as a tarot card reader, and she's basically a fake. She pretends that she has the powers or whatever in order to make a living, and she is in debt and struggling financially, but then she gets a letter mysteriously saying that she's the beneficiary of a Mrs. Westaway. Even though she knows she isn't, she decides to follow through with the letter and go and accept her inheritance, and it's the story of that. So that's all I know, and that's kind of all I want to know. I've been told that you don't want to learn too much before you go into a thriller, so I'm excited to get to this one. The next few, I have quite a bit of YA contemporaries that I'm excited about that I was able to find. And the first one is Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. I never thought I would actually pick this up, but when I saw it, I obviously did. So it was a really good thrift store find. Very excited about this. This is about a young girl. Her name is Maddie, and she is allergic to everything. She's one of these bubble kids, has lived in her house her entire life. She's never left her house because of her allergies. And so the only people in her life is her mother and her nurse who takes care of her. And so she has a very mundane, kind of sad life. And everything changes when a boy moves next door, and she seems to be falling in love with him. So it's about Maddie and Ollie's relationship. This is a very popular booktube, a very popular YA contemporary, so I'm excited to get to this. Funny enough, I found some contemporaries at the dollar store. I find it really exciting when I find some there because it's a very odd place to find contemporaries. But the first one here is The Summer of Supernovas by Darcy Woods. So this one you follow Will, and she's the daughter of an astrologer, and when she discovers a rare planetary alignment, she is forced to tackle her worst astrological fear, the fifth house of relationships and love. It also says, but Will must decide whether a cosmically doomed love is worth rejecting her mother's legacy when she falls for a sensitive guitar player hailing from the wrong side of the astrology chart. I think she falls for someone who is not aligned with her when it comes to astrology, and she's not sure whether or not she should follow what the astrology says, that she shouldn't be with this boy, or should she just be with him because she's falling in love with him. I think that's what this is saying. I've never read anything like that before, but it sounds kind of fun, and excited to check this one out. This is written by Darcy Woods. The other one I found at the thrift store is 7 Days of You by Cecilia Vaness. This we follow Sophia, and she's lived in Japan for quite a long time, specifically in Tokyo, and she's moving back to the United States to finish up her senior year. So she only has 7 days left, and she's really looking forward to those 7 days to live out the last 7 days in the city that she absolutely loves until Jamie comes back to Japan. I guess he left to go to the States to go to school, to a boarding school, and that left Sophia devastated and heartbroken. But when he comes back, she's worried that he's going to ruin her last 7 days in Tokyo, but she's finding it really hard to continue hating him when they're together. So I think it's kind of about them maybe rekindling their relationship after all these years, but what does that mean when she only has 7 days left? I'm excited to read this specifically for the setting. I've never been to Tokyo and I've heard it's an amazing city, so I think it'd be a lot of fun to read a story set in a setting that I'm not used to. So I think this was a really good find. At the thrift store, I found some Suzanne Colasanti. I think that's what her name is. These are very old YAs. First one here, as you can tell, was an old library book. It's called When It Happens. And it follows Sarah and Toby. They're very different from each other. She's very focused on getting into school, where he is really focused on his music and doing really well at the Battle of the Bands. And Sarah wants to fall in love, and she's super excited when Dave, the popular jock, asks her out, and she's very excited about it, but Toby's determined for Sarah to fall in love with him. So I guess it's about their relationship and Sarah having to choose between the two boys. And the other one is So Much Closer. This follows Brooke, and she's in love with Scott and has always been in love with him, but he doesn't know it. And when he and his family moves to New York, she decides to follow him, apparently, which is a little a little different, a little stalkery, but he moves to New York and she follows after him. And it sounds like she does this after a family tragedy. Ever since this family tragedy, she's been closed off with her family and her friends, and so I wonder if it's kind of a way for her of coping with the trauma, is kind of going on this adventure. Even though it's about a boy, she goes to New York and she just kind of is a self-discovery story, because she ends up really learning about herself, and it sounds like the city really starts to inspire her and she discovers some new talents of hers. And when Brooke and Scott possibly finally get together, she has to choose whether or not it's something that she wants, or if the new talents and the new inspiration that she's found with the city is more important. Another contemporary I have, and it's kind of a contemporary slash maybe some magical realism, but it's The Future of Us by Jay Asher and Carolyn Mackler. Jay Asher is the author of 13 Reasons Why. I've never read that book and I don't think I ever will. But when I found this, the synopsis sounded really interesting. This is set in 1996. We follow Josh and Emma, and they've been neighbors their entire life. They've been best friends their entire life until one November, something's happened and it's made the relationship really awkward, and they haven't really been talking ever since. One day, Josh, I have to get this right, Josh's family gets American Online CD-ROM, funny enough, in the mail, and his mom asks him to take it next door to her family. And when they install it on the computer, they open it up and they find themselves on Facebook, oddly enough, which is funny because Facebook has not been invented yet. But when they go on there, they realize they're looking into the future. They're looking at their profiles in the future, and they see their careers, their relationships that they're in, the status updates that they're doing. And every time they refresh it, it changes depending on the choices that they make. By having this weird technology, they are faced with having to make different decisions maybe than they would have depending on the outcome that will happen in the future. This sounded really interesting. I'm kind of excited about this one. A really interesting concept, and I'm really excited to read something set in the 90s because I was a 90s kid, and so it would be really fun to read all those references that I remember. I have one adult contemporary. It's on the older side. Speaking of 90s, I'm pretty sure it came out in the 90s. Oh no, it came out in 2003. That's still quite old. But that's Falling for You by Jill Mansell. I've been trying to get back into Jill Mansell, and so this was another one that I found at the thrift store. So we follow Maddie, and she gets introduced to Kerr McKinnon. I don't think they have a relationship right off the bat, but Her mother is upset that they have met, and she doesn't want her to have a relationship with this man because of something that's happened years in the past. And it sounds like her mother hates this family, and in here it says it's a Romeo and Juliet all over again, so it almost sounds like this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It also says, funny enough, it's a Romeo and Juliet all over again, quick, hide those sharp knives and that little bottle of poison. So let's hope there's no deaths in this one. I have a modern classic, and that is Margaret Atwood's, I don't know if I know how to pronounce this, but Oryx and Crake, or Crack, I'm not sure. I always thought it was kind of a dystopian because that's what Margaret Atwood is known for. But we follow Snowman, and he wakes up one day in a tree with like a sheet draped over him. He's only in a sheet, and he's mourning the loss of his beloved Oryx and his friend Crake. And he goes on this journey of survival. He searches for supplies in a wasteland, and he's trying to piece together what has taken place and like what's happened, I guess, in the current land that he's in, and trying to piece together what's happened to the love of his life and his best friend. That's all I really know, and I think that's all I want to know. For whatever reason, this was always on my radar. I was more interested in this than The Handmaid's Tale, but I think I still do want to read The Handmaid's Tale. But since this was a dystopian, because I do like dystopians, and I thought it would be interesting to start reading more adult dystopians. So when I saw this, you know, why not? I have a paranormal YA, and it's called The Fallen by Thomas E. Snegoski. And we follow Aaron, and on his 18th birthday, he starts hearing voices, and he's starting to be convinced that he's going insane. You know, yeah, of course. But he doesn't know who to confide with when it comes to this. Until one day, a mysterious man starts following him, and this man who knows about his powers passes on a message to him that he is a son of a mortal and an angel, and his role is going to be to help redeem the fallen angels. That's all the synopsis says, and I think that's all I want to know. I haven't read an angel paranormal in so long. So it's quite a long one, actually. But this is first of two. Never heard of this author before, but I have seen this at the library before. So when I saw it, I thought, you know what? I needed a free 5th book, so this is what I quickly grabbed. And then I have 2 incomplete series that I found at the thrift store. Let's start with The Other Paranormal. So these are like 2 bind-ups of a very old YA paranormal series from like the 90s. It's written by L.J. Smith, who's the author of The Vampire Diaries. I've never read The Vampire Diaries, but I think this is a vampire series. And I found Bind Up 2 and Bind Up 3. I was upset that I couldn't find Bind Up 1 where I found these, but I'll have to order that online at some point. So this is called the Night World series, and the first story, so not the bind up, but the first story is called Secret Vampire. There's a total of 9 books, maybe 10 or 11, but at least in the bind ups there's 9 in total. The synopsis for the first story is Poppy, and she gets a diagnosis basically that she's going to die. Her best friend James, who she's secretly in love with, comes to the hospital and offers her immortal life, and for whatever reason he seems a lot different than what she remembers, and that's all the synopsis says on Goodreads. I'm assuming it's a vampire series, and I'm assuming that he's possibly a vampire as well, but they don't really disclose that, except that it's called The Secret Vampire, so I guess it's probably going to be a vampire story. It's funny, on Goodreads when I looked at the covers, the original covers, oh man, brutal covers, but yeah, I'm going to read this, I guess, apparently. And then the last series I got, again, incomplete series, but I got The Partials and Ruins. Partials here is book 1, and Ruins is part 3, or book 3, written by Dan Wells. And I didn't really know the synopsis, but I had this on my Goodreads like forever, and I assumed it was a dystopian, but this actually sounds like a sci-fi or post-apocalyptic world, but it sounds more sci-fi, which I'm kind of excited about. It reminds me of Battlestar Galactica, actually. But the human race is all but extinct after a war with the Partials, who are engineered organic beings who are identical to humans. And during this war, the population was reduced because of RM, which is a weaponized virus. Only a fraction of humanity is immune. And so we follow our main character, Kira. She's 16 and she's a medic in training. All the North Americans have gone to Long Island, I guess, to survive. She's not content anymore with the life that she's living, and she makes a desperate decision to save the last of her race. She will find the survival of humans and partials alike. So it sounds like in order to save her race, she has to go and maybe on a journey to try and find a cure, not just for humans, but also partials. As she makes a desperate decision to save the last of her race, she will find that the survival of humans and partials alike rests in her attempts to uncover the connection between them, connections that humanity has forgotten or perhaps never even knew were there. I'm just more excited about the world, not necessarily the journey that she goes on. I find it an interesting story. Post-apocalyptic world where I guess they're not aliens, but it sounds very sci-fi, where there's an engineered organic beings. I'm excited to get to this one. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but this is the type of sci-fi I would probably enjoy. So here's some books that I bought. So those are the books. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you have not done so. You can follow me on Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter. And you know what, guys? I want you to keep reading. Bye!